Hi there, so today's question is how do you install WordPress on an AWS EC2 instance? So many people are coming from fully hosted providers that provide these sorts of applications as standard. And the question is, once you have an EC2 instance, how do you install this sort of software? There are a couple of options in Amazon depending on your technical capabilities. The first is Lightsail, which is a fully managed solution. You simply point and click and they will deploy WordPress for you. The second is using a WordPress build in the AWS Marketplace. Bitnami has a build you can select and run there. And that's a series of just very simple questions. It'll create the build for you. And then the third option is what we're going to do today, which is running commands directly inside the shell to install all the necessary software to make it work. So first things first, let's get ourselves an instance running. So from the instances tab on the left, we're going to launch a brand new Amazon Linux instance. I'm going to select free tier and just review it and launch with the standard options. I have a key pair from an existing video I'm going to use. You might need to create a new key pair. If you do, don't forget to download it because that's the first and only time you'll be able to do that. And this will be ready in just one moment. My instance is now ready and I've SSH'd into it. If you need to know how to do that, I have a video on how do you connect to your EC2 instance, so go and check that out. Once you're into your instance, the very first thing you need to do is run sudo yum update to install any missing updates on the instance itself. This just takes a moment. WordPress uses the LAMP stack. The LAMP stack is Linux, Apache, MySQL, and PHP. At the moment we just have Linux, so we have to install the other three components before we can use WordPress. So the first step is to run those commands to do this. So we simply say sudo yum install. The Y flag means we won't be asked to confirm. That's Apache, PHP, MySQL, and PHP libraries for MySQL. What you'll find is if you're watching this video at some point in the future, those version numbers might change, but right now in January 2019, those are the latest versions. At this point, we've installed those services, but we haven't started them yet. So the first thing to do for Apache is to make sure that that service is going to start. So sudo service httpd start. And you should get a response back saying that's okay. That's fine, except if the machine restarts, the service won't start automatically. So the next step is to make sure that happens. And that's simple enough. We simply say check config httpd and on. And now that will automatically start in the event the machine restarts for any reason. You can make sure that works because obviously there's no response from the command by typing check config list httpd, and you'll see that that has been configured to be turned on. So now Apache's installed, we can test that. We can see if we can find the default web page on that server. So back in the instance window, if we look at the DNS address and copy that to the clipboard and paste, this won't work immediately. So why is that? Well, first we have to change the security rules so that this becomes visible over port 80. So if you go back to the first tab and look at security groups under Launch Wizard 3 in my case, we just need to change the inbound rules and allow HTTP and save that configuration. If we go back to this tab now, you'll see it's refreshed and we can see the test page is loaded successfully. So at this point, we have Apache loaded on our Linux box. We have the L and the A. Now we need the M and the P. The next step is to make some changes to some file permissions in the Apache document root. So there's a few commands you have to run. So the first is to add your user, which in this case is the EC2-user, to the Apache group. Okay, that's that done. And to wait for that to pick up, so we have to just log out and log back in. Just to make sure that worked, we can just run groups to make sure that EC2 user appears in the group. Next, we just have to change the group ownership of we tested that Apache was running by showing the test page, but now we want to make sure that PHP is running after being installed. So if we just echo this command, the syntax can be a little tricky, so just be careful as you type this. And then back on the tab where we had the test page running, just add PHP info to the end of that, and you should get this. This proves that PHP version 7 is running now on this server. Once you're finished with that, you should really remove the file we just created, because it's a security risk if you leave it out there, so just RM that from that directory. Next, we're going to set up MySQL on this server. Now, it's possible to use a database server that's not connected to the instance, something like Amazon RDS or Aurora on RDS. But in this case, we're just going to use MySQL installed on the same instance. So we've installed the software. Now we need to start the service. So just run sudo service MySQL d start, and the service is now started. And the most important thing to do at this point is to run the command to set up a secure installation. It'll ask you for a current password for root, which is usually none. Then you want to set up a new root password. Definitely want to remove anonymous users. Yes to disabling the remote login. Yes to removing the test database. And yes to reload the privilege table and save those changes. Just like with Apache now, if the machine reboots, the MySQL service won't start by itself, so we just run check config to make sure that MySQL will run each time the machine starts. And those are the basics. So now we have in the LAMP stack, Linux is the box itself, Apache, the web service is running, MySQL, the database, is installed and running, and PHP is also installed and running. So the LAMP stack itself is in place. Now we just need to install WordPress, which is actually very easy. Before we install the WordPress installation package, let's just make sure we're in our home directory, which we are, and then run wget to download the latest installation package. Once you have the file, just unzip and unarchive the package. Before installing WordPress, we just need to make sure that MySQL is configured properly and has the WordPress user set up. So just log into MySQL using the root password that you set up a couple of steps earlier. From this console, we're going to create a user called WP user. Once you've executed those commands, you now have a valid MySQL user for your WordPress installation to use. The next step is to make sure that that information is entered into the WP config file. In this directory, we've got our WordPress folder. If we just cd into that folder, you should be able to see in there is a WP config sample file that's been set up for us. Let's create a copy of that. And then we'll run nano on WP config. If you really love to, you can use VI, Vim, or any of the other preferred text editors. And this comes up with a list of defaults and tells us where we need to put those values. So in our example, we set up our WordPress database as wp-db, our WordPress user, Scrolling a little further down, you can see a section that talks about authentication, unique keys and salts. You need to make sure you follow the steps here because otherwise your installation won't be at all secure. There's a link provided there, which if we just copy to our browser, it automatically generates a list of random salts for us. So once you have this link, copy those back to your WP config file and delete the ones that are already there. Once you've done this, basically at this point the WP config file is ready to be used. So just save the file with Ctrl X. Now I'm assuming that your WordPress installation is going to run in the document root, so let's copy all those files across. I'm already in the WordPress directory, so that's why that didn't work. Okay, now we can see what WordPress is doing. If we go back to the tab with the domain name for the EC2 instance we created, and just put in wp-admin on the end, and you'll see the famous 5-minute setup screen. Don't do anything at this point because there's a couple of important steps we still have to finish. So back in our console, we need to make some changes so that permalinks will work, and to do that we need to find our httpd conf file, which on Amazon Linux, again we'll use nano, should be in etc httpd conf. So in this file there are multiple sections that look very similar, so you have to make sure you find the part that directory var www.html. You need to change allow override from none to all, and that's it. Then we can just save the file. Finally, and we're almost there, we just need to now make some changes for file permissions for the Apache web server. This is really just a series of commands you have to enter. After all that, the last thing to do is to restart the Apache service to pick up all these changes. So sudo service httpd restart. Everything is okay. So back to this screen over here, which again we get to by getting the public DNS from our instances page and attaching wp-admin to the end. This will take us to the one-step install. So now we can follow the final steps on creating the WordPress installation. I'm calling this AWS test. I'm going to use the suggested password and put in my email address. This is really just a test, so I'm going to discourage search engines. And now we're ready to log in, so it's confirmed our username is AWS test and the password that was shown earlier. And that is how you install WordPress on Amazon Linux. At this stage, what we've done is we've taken a basic small instance on Amazon, we've installed Apache, MySQL and PHP to that box, and we've then installed WordPress on top of that. In subsequent videos, I'm going to show you some simple tricks you can do to speed up this whole process and to also help manage and secure this instance. That's it for now. Thanks very much for following along. See you again soon.